October 13, 1943. The Kingdom of Italy, a founding member of Hitler's Axis, declares war on Germany. In less than 6 weeks, Italy went from ally to enemy. Its king fled the capital, its armies were split apart, and entire garrisons were attacked by soldiers who, days earlier, had been comrades. This is the story of how a European power switched sides in the middle of the world's largest war, and what that choice cost the country overnight. By the summer of 1943, Italy's war was falling apart. The North African campaign was lost, Allied troops had landed in Sicily, and Italian cities were being bombed weekly. Inside the country, support for Benito Mussolini's fascist regime had collapsed. On 25 July 1943, after a meeting of the Fascist Grand Council, King Victor Emmanuel III dismissed Mussolini and had him arrested. The new prime minister was Marshal Pietro Badoglio, a career army officer who publicly promised that Italy would keep fighting alongside Germany, while privately looking for a way out. Italy's army was exhausted. Its divisions were under-equipped and scattered across occupied Europe, Greece, the Balkans, France, the Soviet front. The home front was starving, and the German alliance now looked like a death sentence. By August, Badoglio's government began quietly sending feelers to the Western Allies through neutral contacts in Lisbon and Madrid. The goal was simple: an armistice that could end the bombing and save the monarchy before total collapse. The secret negotiations began in late August 1943 in Allied-occupied Sicily. Italian General Giuseppe Castellano met with American General Walter Bedell Smith, Eisenhower's chief of staff, at a village called Cassibile. The Allies demanded unconditional surrender. The Italians argued for a peace with honor. Castellano had no real leverage. On the 3rd of September 1943, he signed what became known as the Armistice of Cassibile. The document ordered an immediate ceasefire with Allied forces and required Italy to deny German troops any further use of its territory, ports, or equipment. Smith insisted the signing be kept secret until Allied landings on the mainland were underway to prevent the Germans from preempting the move. That secrecy became the trap. Only a handful of Italian leaders knew the armistice existed. Most Italian commanders across Europe were left uninformed, still coordinating with the Wehrmacht and still expecting to fight the Allies. For 5 days, the deal remained hidden, a country bound by 2 opposing alliances at once. When the armistice finally went public on the 8th of September, Italy would discover what it meant to change sides in the middle of a war. At 6:30 p.m. on the 8th of September 1943, Italian radio interrupted its normal program. A stiff, unfamiliar voice read a short announcement. The Italian government, recognizing the impossibility of continuing the unequal struggle against the overwhelming enemy power, has requested an armistice. Hostilities against the Anglo-American forces cease immediately. The voice was Pietro Badoglio. He had just told his country that Italy was no longer fighting the Allies, but he hadn't told his generals what to do next. There was no plan, no coordinated orders, no explanation of how to handle the hundreds of thousands of German troops still stationed across Italy and its occupied zones. In Rome, soldiers cheered, thinking the war was over. In other places, commanders panicked. In the Balkans, Italian divisions still under German command heard the news from BBC bulletins before hearing it from their own headquarters. That night, Eisenhower confirmed the armistice in his own broadcast from Allied headquarters in North Africa. The Allies assumed Italy's army would now resist the Germans. Instead, most of it was leaderless, and the Germans had been preparing for this exact moment for weeks. As soon as Badoglio finished speaking, Field Marshal Albert Kesselring put Operation Achse into motion. German divisions already stationed throughout Italy received sealed orders that had been waiting since Mussolini's fall. By midnight, German units were seizing airfields, cutting communications, and surrounding Italian garrisons. In Rome, the 2nd Parachute Division moved toward the city. Italian forces briefly resisted, then collapsed. In the north, German troops disarmed Italian formations with little fight. On islands and occupied territories, it turned into bloodshed. On Cephalonia, the Italian Acqui Division tried to defend itself against German attacks. After 6 days of fighting, the Germans executed thousands of captured Italians, one of the worst massacres of Italian soldiers in the war. A few weeks later, on the island of Kos, German troops shot more than 100 Italian officers who had refused to surrender their men. Across Europe, roughly 600,000 Italian soldiers were captured and shipped to labor camps inside Germany. Overnight, the Axis alliance was gone, and German troops were treating their former allies as enemies. While chaos spread through the army, the country's leaders were already on the move. At dawn on the 9th of September, King Victor Emmanuel III, his family, and Badoglio boarded a convoy at Pescara on the Adriatic coast. They sailed south to Brindisi, an area recently captured by Allied troops, leaving the capital without government or command. Rome fell under German control within hours. For ordinary Italians and soldiers still in the field, the abandonment felt like betrayal. Units waiting for orders received none. Some surrendered to the Germans, others tried to fight on their own. Historian Carlo d'Este later wrote that the Italian army collapsed, not because its men would not fight, but because no one told them whom to fight for. In a matter of days, Italy's state had effectively vanished, the monarchy hiding in the south, Mussolini in German custody, and the Wehrmacht now ruling the center and north of the country. In Brindisi, Badoglio and the royal government scrambled to re-establish control under Allied supervision. On 13 October 1943, they made the decision official. Italy declared war on Germany. The announcement stated that all ties with the dreadful past are broken. Italy now fights for her own redemption. From that moment, Italy became a co-belligerent of the Allied powers, not yet an equal partner, but an active participant against its former ally. The remaining ships of the Italian Navy joined the Allies. Italian airmen began flying missions with British squadrons. And in southern Italy, new formations, the Italian co-belligerent army, started fighting alongside the Americans and British in the brutal push up the peninsula. While the South now served the Allies, the North was seized by Germany. In September, a German commando raid led by Otto Skorzeny freed Benito Mussolini from his mountain prison. Under German protection, Mussolini proclaimed a new fascist regime, the Italian Social Republic, headquartered at Salo on Lake Garda. From that point on, there were two Italys: the Kingdom of Italy, aligned with the Allies and ruled from Brindisi, and the Social Republic, a German puppet state fighting to the end alongside the Wehrmacht. Italian soldiers were forced to choose. Some joined partisan bands in the mountains. Others stayed loyal to Mussolini or fought with the Germans. Families were divided. Civil war layered itself onto the World War already raging across the country. For the Allies, Italy's surrender was a political triumph, but a military grind. The German army did not withdraw. It dug in. By winter 1943, Kesselring's forces held the Gustav Line, a defensive belt stretching across the mountains from sea to sea. The campaign to break that line, the landings at Anzio, the fighting at Monte Cassino, would take another year and tens of thousands of lives. But strategically, Italy's switch still mattered. It denied Germany the use of Italian ports and airfields, forced the Wehrmacht to divert divisions southward, and gave the Allies a foothold on the European mainland, the step before Normandy. The Italian campaign dragged on for another year and a half. German forces held northern Italy until the spring of 1945, using the Po Valley as their last defensive line. Fighting between partisans, fascist militias, and German units turned towns into battlefields. Rome was liberated by the Allies on the 4th of June 1944. In the north, resistance groups grew into full-scale armies. By April 1945, they rose against the German garrisons and what was left of Mussolini's regime. Mussolini tried to escape toward Switzerland, but was captured near Lake Como on the 27th of April 1945 and executed the next day. The German surrender in Italy came on the 2nd of May 1945, 6 days before the end of the war in Europe. After the fighting, Italy's monarchy collapsed under its own wartime record. In June 1946, a national referendum abolished the kingdom and created the Italian Republic. The switch of 1943 hadn't ended the war for Italy. It had turned it inward, into occupation, civil war, and eventually liberation. That was the real cost of changing sides overnight.